Hello everyone. Once again, I'm sorry about the cut made in the first part of this presentation. But to continue with, we stopped on this slide and let's start from the beginning. We remember that we have three types or methods of communication, and we're done with the two methods, verbal and written methods of communication. Now we should be dealing with the visual methods of communication. Visual methods of communication include films, videos, and Microsoft PowerPoint displays. Now we have here also posters and charts and diagrams and photographs and cartoons. Okay, films, videos, and Microsoft PowerPoint displays are often used by businesses to help train new staff or to inform salespeople about new products. Posters can be used to explain a simple but important message by means of a picture or a cartoon. Charts and diagrams can be used in reports or letters to show numerical data or to simplify complicated ideas. And photographs and cartoons can be used to add variety, color, and humor to a message. Okay, same with the two other methods. Visual communications also have advantages and disadvantages. Now, we have 2 points for the advantages of visual communication. We have there, it can present information in an appealing and attractive way. It can also be used to make written message clearer by adding a chart or diagram to illustrate the point being made. Okay. Now for the disadvantages of this method of communication, we also have 2 points. Okay, there's no feedback in the center of the message. May need to use other forms of communication to check that the message has been understood. And the second point is that charts and graphs may be difficult for some people to interpret. Okay, in your book on page 123, you will find activity 9.5, methods of communication. You have to copy this table in your copybook, and we shall be filling out this table according to the key advantage or disadvantage of each method of or means of communication. The first one, we have letters. They're quite slow. It takes time to write letter, and postal services might be poor. And for the written record, yes, it may be an advantage. Receiver has the letter and the sender likely is to keep a copy. And for the feedback, the feedback's likely to be slow. The receiver may not reply at all. Now for using telephone calls, it's very quick if the receiver is available to take the call. Otherwise, of course, it won't be fast. Now, is there a written record? No, there's none. And feedback is immediate. Okay, meeting with employees as a means of communication. It takes time to organize, and there could be a lengthy discussion at the meeting. Will there be a written record? No, but someone might keep a written record of the main point raised, most likely the secretary or the notes taker, and these are called the minutes of the meeting. We have the feedbacks. Okay, immediate feedbacks may be received if the main sender allows others to respond to the message. Okay, now how about social network sites? Of course, they're fast. It's a trend nowadays. And is there a written record? If the messages and tweets can be printed, yes. And for the feedback, It will be very quick if the receivers are online using their cell phones at the time. For staff newspaper, it's quite slow why it takes time to print and distribute them. It is a written record actually itself, and there's no feedback because letters to the paper might be encouraged, but few will bother to write them. How about the websites as a means of communication? They're fast, just like the email. And for the website, there will be a written record if printed. Same with the email. Now, about the feedback, for websites, it depends on whether the receivers are online. And for the email, it's very fast if the receiver is using email at that time. Now, for notices, it's quite slow. It may be slow as it might take several days before every potential receiver reads the message or will be made aware of the notice. Now, it may be considered a written record, and there's not usually feedbacks received. Now, on page 124 of your textbook, you will find there the revision summary for communication methods. As we have discussed earlier, revision summaries are supposed to be copied in the copybook. Why? It's a way for you to remember the keywords, the terms, the business terms, and it's like a practice for you to present the topic, and it will also serve as a revision on your part, for your part. Okay, so let us proceed to activity 9.6, which is found on the same page. Activity 9.6 is about trying to find what kind of message we may prepare for each situation given, A to M. What kind of method may we may apply, and why did we choose such? Okay, now which communication method might be most appropriate for the following messages? Justify your answer in each case. You will see in your book that letter A, you have there should be no smoking in the staff canteen. So the message should simply be no smoking, and we may prepare a notice. And why did we choose notice as the method of communicating to those going to the canteen? The notice needs to be available at all times to remind the workers. Okay. For letter B, we have there the situation is the management want to instruct all employees on how the new computer system works. So the message is computer instruction. Okay, and the method will be conducting a meeting. Why? To allow for clear explanation and feedback if unsure. The third item is details of the business sales figures for the last 4 years are being sent to shareholders. So our message will be sales data. A written document is needed. Why? Because there might be many shareholders. They would not want to attend the meeting for this information alone. Okay, for letter D, the finance manager wants to remind the operation manager that they have arranged a meeting for next week. So we shall be sending a meeting reminder via email. Why? Because it's quick and cheap, and easy feedback may be received. Letter E, the product development manager wants to inform directors of the market research into 3 new product ideas. He hopes that they will agree to launch one of these products. Okay, let's see. So our message is market research, method, written report. Why? Because it's likely to be much information, so it's too detailed for verbal communication, and directors may want to study it at length. Okay, For letter F, the office manager wants to obtain views from all office workers on how paper waste could be reduced. So our message is reducing paper waste. Method meeting. Why? Because it's important to get all of the workers' opinions. Okay? Now to continue with, we have letter G in your textbook. A supervisor plans to warn for the last time a worker who's always late for work. The best, it's a warning. Okay, the message is warning. The best thing to prepare here is, or method to use is sending him a letter. Why? Because this needs to be a formal document that can be referred to later, for example, at employment court or tribunal. Okay, for letter H, we have the case in our book. Next year's holiday dates need to be made available to all workers. So we have to caption our message holiday dates. Method of communication to be used, notice on the board. Okay. And why do we need to prepare a notice for this? It needs to be referred to by all workers but not urgent information. Okay, letter I. We have the human resources manager who wants to invite an applicant for a job to an interview. So he will prepare the invitation to applicants via email if time is limited. Otherwise, it could be letter 2. And why? Because it's quick and written method can contain details of time of interview and other details. Letter J is the operation manager wants to send the plans for a new factory to the managing director who is on a foreign business trip. So our message will be plans via fax. And why did we choose this? Because plans are complex and cannot be communicated verbally. Okay, letter K is existing customers of a bank are to be informed about a new type of bank account. So the message is new bank account via website, and many bank accounts are now managed online. That's the reason why we go online here using websites. So this could be the best way to communicate with customers. Okay, now to continue with, we have letter L from your book. A new contract needs to be agreed and signed between a farmer and the cooperative he sells his milk to. So the message is new contract. It's very inviting with this message, and the method would be a written contract letter. Why? Because it must be written and with evidence, as there might be a dispute over the terms of contract in the near future, or maybe none at all. The last item is the marketing department of a cosmetics business wants to launch a new perfume aimed at women with above average incomes. So we have the message there, new perfume method, social networking sites. Why? Because a form of vital marketing which can spread the news of product very quickly via social networking sites. Okay, so we will try to go to the barriers of communication, but for a little introduction, let's have let's revise formal and informal communication. Formal communication is when messages are sent through established channels using professional language. Are they the only way you learn about what is going on in our organization? Okay, let's see. Informal communication is when information is sent and received casually. Okay, unlike in the formal communication, we will have to deal things with professionally. So here, and received casually using everyday language. Now, what can be done to avoid informal links existing between people in the organization? Let's see. We have the managers since they cannot prevent the informal links existing between people in the organization, they have to uh, illustrate or present the direction of communications via the organization chart. Okay, now on page 125 of your book, you will find there a diagram of the direction of communications. A typical organization chart for a business is shown here. Okay, you will see that the man on top is the chief executive, and we have labels a line A going down and B going up. That's the how the path taken by our communication methods. And you will see letter C, arrow is pointing at the people on the third line of our chart. Okay, now let's see. Look at the arrows. They indicate the direction of communication. Arrow A shows the downward communication. Okay, I hope the arrows are seen clearly. Let's use a laser here. Okay, now this is when messages are sent from managers. This is the chief of executive, and these are the managers, managerial level. From the managers to the subordinates. The subordinates are people or the level under someone. Okay, here. These two figures here are considered representatives of subordinates also, but of the managers. Okay. Now we have, it can be used for instructions or statements on important business decisions. It does not allow for feedback. If these messages have to pass through many levels of hierarchy, then the original meaning of the message could become distorted. Okay, we will learn more of that when we go to communication barriers. Now here, arrow B, it shows upward communication. This is when a message or feedback is passed from the subordinates here up to the managers. Okay, as we have seen, such feedback can be an essential part of effective communication. The workers in an organization have much to offer by being involved in the communication process. They should not be afraid of contributing to discussions or meetings. They should be open about what they think. They should learn how to think aloud and present their stand. The organization has much to gain when the managers are prepared to listen to and act upon messages received from those lower down the organization. It is important to listen to the subordinates because the managers, okay, may know the actual situation in the company. All right, and the communication is two-way process, which is the an effective way to run a business. ROC here, as we see here, shows horizontal communication, sometimes referred to as lateral communication. So let's remember the term. Will you highlight that in your book on page 125, ROC? Under ROC, you have there the term lateral communication. This occurs when people at the same level in an organization communicate with each other. Information and ideas can be exchanged at formal and informal meetings. This can be a cause of conflict between departments. For example, if marketing informs operations that the quality of output is so poor that consumers are returning goods as faulty, so there will be a little bit of conflict and someone has to mediate. And this is the time when they have to sit down with their superiors. Superiors are the level higher than their level. Okay. Now let's see. This is where communication barriers enter. Okay, how communication How do communication barriers arise and how can we reduce or remove them? Okay, first let's define communication barriers. They are factors that stop effective communication of messages. This could lead to serious problems for the organization. So let us try to see some communication barriers. They are found in your book on page 126. We have there most common barriers to effective communication and the ways to overcome them. The communication barrier here on this slide is the problems with the sender. Okay, let's try to describe it and how the barrier can be reduced or removed. Okay, first situation is language which is too difficult is used. Jargon or technical terms may not be understood by the receiver. So we have to use language that is to the level of the receiver. Okay, now how can this be solved? The sender should ensure that the message uses language which is understandable here, and the use of jargon or terms which are too technical should be avoided. This is the advice given to us. If we want to communicate, we should not be using jargon or technical terms. The second situation is when the sender uses verbal means of communication but speaks too quickly or not clearly enough. So what will happen? It's a barrier to effective communication. Now, how can we reduce or remove it? The sender should make the message as clear as possible. Feedback should be asked for to ensure the message is being understood. Okay, the third situation here is that the sender communicates the wrong message or passes it to the wrong receiver. The sender must make sure that the right person is receiving the right message. Okay, we have a saying here, do not bark at the wrong tree. Okay, so now the message is too long and too much detail prevents the main points being understood. So when we send a message, it should be direct to the point. Otherwise, you will lose the center of your communication. You will lose the concept of the message. Now, this is again the fault of the sender. Now, the message should be as brief as possible to allow the main points to be understood. The second problem is the problems with the medium here. Do we remember our cycle? In the beginning of the chapter, we have there the process of effective communication from the sender to a medium where we send the message, through which we send the message, and then the receiver, and the feedback can only be done if the message received is understood. Okay, so let's go to the medium. The medium may be any form of method that we use so that our message can be conveyed. Let's see, first situation, the message may be lost so the receiver does not see it. Can we reduce or how can the barrier be removed? It is important to insist on feedback. Okay, a reply, a response, feedback. Second is the wrong channel has been used. Okay, let's see what happens. What's the solution? The sender must select the appropriate channel for each message sent. Okay, if the message is sent down a long chain of command, all right, the original meaning of the message may be lost. This is what we mentioned earlier about the direction of communications in an organization. Okay, how can we deal with it? The shortest possible channel should be used to avoid this problem. Okay, if you want to, if a subordinate wants the chief executive to hear his voice, he should go directly to him. That's one way. Otherwise, if he will go through like 2 or 3 levels, the message might be distorted or he may not be understood. Okay, so miscommunication will occur. Next is no feedback is received. if there will be no feedback received, okay, how can we deal with this? A letter was sent to workers asking for their opinions. Okay. Breakdown of the medium. Other forms of communication should be made possible if we will not use the same medium. Let's go to the next barrier, problems with the receiver. They might not be listening or paying attention. And how can we solve this? The importance of the message should be emphasized. The importance only. Okay, second case is the receiver may not like or trust the sender. So only shrugging of the shoulders will be received. So how can we deal with it? There should be trust between the sender and the receiver, or effective communication is unlikely. Now we have here the problems with the feedback. There is no feedback. Okay, in this situation, we may say perhaps no feedback was asked for. That's why there's no feedback. Now another case is it is received too slowly or is distorted. Now how's that? Direct lines of communication between subordinates and managers must always be available, must be open. Communication must be open, and so harmony may be realized in the company. All right. So let's go to activity 9.7 on page 127 of your book. It's about reducing communication barriers. The case study is stated in your book. Take time to read it, and at the end of the case study we have two questions. First is to identify the 4 possible causes of communication barriers within STC, and the next one is letter B, explain to Sanchez how he could overcome the 4 communication barriers that you explained in A. So we have here 4 possible causes of communication barriers. You may find other barriers and you may write them in your copybook. Okay, so we have number 1, employees in other countries. Okay, 4 possible causes of communication barriers. Language and distance might be barriers, because if you have employees in other countries, then be sure that you have the same you speak the same language, simple and understandable. Okay, another how can we overcome them? Let's go down here. Number 1, the counterpart of these causes of communication barriers here. Okay, how can we overcome number 1 here, this possible cause? Okay, to ensure messages are in language that all can understand, or IT methods that allow for instant translation. That's a good solution. Okay, that's a good advice. The second possible cause is few meetings are held. Reliance on written communication. They rely so much on written communication, which does not encourage feedback. Okay. This is a cause of communication barrier, because information might be overloading, okay, based on a pile of memorandums or notices from the administration. So solution is to use video conferencing to allow for verbal communication over large distances. For those in the same vicinity, workplace, okay, short meetings will help. Okay, now we have email could cause information overload. Okay, so the solution is to limit the use of emails. Use some telephone calls for important messages that allow for verbal feedback or discussion. And the last possible cause written here, uses managers as intermediaries to communicate with workers. Messages might have become delayed or distorted. Right. So the solution is to use more direct forms of communication for some messages. Okay, so we have here on the same page 127 in your textbook another revision summary based on this particular topic, the barriers to effective communication. When you copy this to your in your copybook or notebook, you will be able to be very familiar with the terms we have used in discussing this particular topic, the barriers to effective communication. Okay, so in your notebook, another reminder, this slide will remind you that in your notebook, copy the revision summaries about choosing communication methods on page 120, communication methods on page 124, and barriers to effective communication and how they can be overcome on page 127. Now, another task is to complete and revise part 2 discussion. This is part 2 video presentation, and is the second part of the prepared video presentation. Okay, now to close chapter 9, we have to deal with the international business in focus on page 127 of your book, and the exam style questions on page 128, and the end of section case study, which is on pages 129 to 130, and also the next video, all this in one presentation. Okay, so we call it the part 3 of chapter 9. We shall be discussing the revision questions and the MCQs in our booklet. Okay, so let's look forward to the uploading of this video presentation to close chapter 9, and we could immediately go to the next chapter. Thank you once again for staying with me, listening to me, and trying to make the topic simple in chapter 9. So I'm glad to be here to you to present the topics in chapter 9. Okay, so have happy virtual learning and always take care. Okay, bye.